Speaking of Happy presents Frankly Speaking with co-hosts Eli Rigatuso, founder and queer transmasculine two-spirit of the Menominee Nation, and the lovely Avalisa Gallo, model, public speaker, makeup fanatic, and outspoken transgender advocate. Together, we are Frankly Speaking. Tonight we have special guests, Savannah Daniels, Lorelei Casisto, and Christy Aphonia. Woo woo! Here we are, episode number 2.
It feels so surreal.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, woof! It's been a journey getting here, hasn't it?
It really has.
It really has.
We have done it.
We have done it. I'm so excited. I'm super, super excited. I hope I pronounced all those names correctly because crunch time, I wasn't able to check in with folks, but you can correct me. First of all, I would like to welcome to the show. I'm going to add Savannah, but Savannah's got her camera off. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. There she is. The lovely Savannah Daniels, who is a disabled combat veteran, a mother of 2 beautiful pets, and Southern Black trans woman. She's been in massage, cosmetology, makeup, and culinary schools. Right now, she's living uninhibited and hopeful. I mean, welcome to the show, Savannah.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I am currently visiting Lake Tahoe, as you can see in the background.
So beautiful.
It's a gorgeous, and I thought I'd do this here in nature.
What a beautiful backdrop. It's great to be out in nature when we're having these tough conversations.
Yep.
Also on the show today, joining us is Lorelei. Lorelei is a trans woman living in New York City. She's 22 years old and works as a pharmacy technician. She also yells about trans topics on the internet and plays with yo-yos.
Yes.
Some very important things to have happen in the world.
Yes. I sell you your hormones and also yell on the internet about it. And I'm not in New York right now. I'm in Mexico, which is why I don't have my usual my microphone may be a bit echoey in here. But yeah, I'm here.
But we'll forgive the echo. It doesn't sound too bad at this point, though.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you so much for being with us. And last but certainly not least, we have the lovely Christy Aphonia. And Christy is a trans activist based in Austin, Texas. She has spoken at LGBTQ plus pride rallies and BLM events. She's recently extended to online activism and has a YouTube channel promoting progressive policies called Reframing the Narrative. She believes activism and engagement is the key for trans women and minorities of all kinds to obtain basic equality under the law and in the healthcare system. Thanks for joining us, Christy.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes. You have a beautiful backdrop, and we have
all of our guests, all of the guests are not at their house. I'm actually visiting Houston, Texas right now. So that's
So look at y'all. But we are grateful that even though you were on the road, you were able to join in and have this frank conversation with us.
Yes, let's do it.
Yeah, we are going to do it. So here's the deal. I agreed to take something of a back seat to the lovely Miss Gallo this go around because we're talking about a topic that really I personally, as well as all of you, feel like there's, we know that there's an umbrella, right? There's this transgender umbrella, and underneath that umbrella, there's your binary trans folks, and then your non-binary trans folks, two-spirit, agender, those folks that aren't binary, right? And all of us on the show agree that all of those things are valid, but there's times when I think there's questions about whether or not folks are thinking about how they're speaking about their personal narrative and how it might impact other folks. And so I'm going to play a couple of videos that were shared with me. And this is what is going to start our conversation today. So we're all going to get to take a look at these videos. I will just kind of give a little bit of a disclaimer that these videos might make you uncomfortable. I know they made me uncomfortable, but I'm going to go ahead and play the first one, and we'll go through the first one. If we feel like we need to watch a second one, we will, but I'll go ahead and play this one first.
Happy Transgender Visibility Day. Comment here and tell me your personal pronouns. I'll tell you about mine. I came out as a transgender female when I was 3 years old and learned how to speak, and then was forced back into the closet until I was about 13. And then I lived a full female lifestyle until I was about 15. In that would be the early 2000s. I chose to be well, as puberty was developing me into a man, I learned how to change my voice and just went with what nature gave me. And I played straight guys and gay guys and, you know, drag queens and stuff like that for many, many years. And yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, my gender is actor. But secondly, my gender is whatever you think it is at that moment. You can call me dude, chick, cis, bro, king, queen. It's all good. I call myself they, them, because that's what fits me the most.
Okay, so that's video one. I don't know what y'all think. I'm happy to play a second video if you like, or we can have a little bit of conversation around that
I
one.
think the second video is what's necessary to actually kick this off.
I was going to say that wasn't the one that I'd seen. I think we should have the second one.
Okay, well, I only grabbed 2 of the, I think,
Well,
4
first
that
off,
were
I don't
sent
say
me.
I'm trans female. I am trans female. It's not really up for debate. And I think what you meant was, why don't I present more cis presenting female? It's kind of hard to understand, but I'm a big lesbian. And I have no actual interest in presenting as a cis feminine female, because that's an entirely brainwashed image. It was created by Hollywood and the fashion industry and the porn industry, all of which were at one point controlled by men. Yes, the patriarchy brainwashing society into what they wanted women to be and look like. So I hope I answered your question that I am presenting as feminine. I'm not presenting as cis presenting feminine, because it's a lie.
Oh, Christy.
That's the one.
That was my first time watching
That's
it.
the one.
That's the one. There was the contradiction between that and one that wasn't shown was strange to me. The I am trans feminine, the mention of schizophrenia, and then also the my gender is whatever you want at the moment. Those are 3 very different things.
Yeah, like the my name is Chris, but I have an inner demon and her name is Terrorizing. And it going from that to I have schizophrenia to I present however I want to present because I'm trans to I am a trans female. And yeah, so what we're talking about today is how understanding that there is a binary, there is male and female, and then there are things that exist inside and around all of that. There is absolutely no problem. I get so much joy from like hyping up my non-binary and my gender non-conforming and my gender diverse siblings within the trans umbrella. I give them so much life. But then for someone to say, I'm not going to follow any rules of gender. I don't believe in the binary. Fuck the binary. But also, I want you to address me by the binary is extremely dangerous. And I think that I spoke to Eli because I wanted to have a conversation that we haven't been able to have because, you know, as trans women, we are very often accused of gatekeeping. We are accused of, you know, invalidating other people's transness. And I don't think that it's that, because I can believe that I am a binary female and also believe that somebody exists that doesn't exist within that binary. That's you. You live your life. I'm not going to explain your situation to other people because I don't understand it. But at the same time, we can both exist together. Where there becomes a problem is when people try to, we're all driving down the road. We're all in our lane. Some of us have paved our own, a brand new lane on the highway, and it's cool. But when you swerve into my lane and then start telling me what the speed limit is on my lane, it's like, huh, what's happening? What's happening here? And so it's creating a very complicated situation with trans women specifically. I'm not sure if the same conversation is happening with trans men, but I do know that the conversation is happening very strongly with trans women.
You know,
anybody want to chime in?
It's really confusing to me, you know. And like I said, they're allowed, you know, I will support her to whatever extent, you know, I can. But one of the things that me as a trans woman who came out as trans 20 years ago, you know, I had to give up everything to become who I am, you know? And it wasn't something where I could possibly present as male afterwards and go back and forth, you know? I had to give up my male privilege. And however society viewed me at that time was as a transgender person. Now, it has gotten a bit easier to be trans, I'm not going to lie, but 20 years ago, I mean, it was freaking hard. You know, I had to give up my support system, my family, and everything else in order to live my life and live my truth. Now, putting on a hat with a ponytail, I don't feel as if you're going to be ostracized by your family. You know, your family who is your support system, your family which helps you grow and become you know, pushes you further, you know. I feel like a trans woman had to give up a bit more than just putting on a hat and making videos. I don't know.
It feels really, hurtful. It feels like they are making a joke of us, and they are invalidating our entire transition. I have given up so much. I have worked so hard. All of the issues that trans women specifically deal with are very intense issues that we go through because we see ourselves along the binary, like laser, surgeries, getting name changes, getting gender changes. These are very permanent things. And I can't just, you know, snap my hat off. And he does that in a video. They do that in a video. They take the hat off, they take their shirt off, they're showing their male chest with their chest hair and their beard and their stubble, and they're like, oh well, I can give you thirst trap if that's what you want. And it's like, so the message that message that you're giving is that this is a fucking costume.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things that when you sent those videos to me, you usually send me stuff and you'll say something. So it kind of tips me off about what you're wanting me to comment about. But you sent like 4 of them and I watched them all in a row. And after the 4th one, I was like, is this sarcasm? Like, is this a joke? Like, I thought that they were just joking. I didn't think that they were serious. And then as we continue to have more conversation, I was like, that is so dangerous.
It's happened before, though.
On multiple levels.
It has happened before. We have had actually people dress up, actually Republican people dress up and act like they're a transgender woman, and say things that would confuse the right into sparking more hatred towards the transgender community. And that has happened. That's happened actually several times. And those people tend to go viral. So to me, whenever I see this, I honestly think that is this like a conservative person who's trying to spark more hate against the transgender women? I'm not sure. I'm honestly not even convinced that this person is 100% serious.
Yeah, I see the like. There is definitely like you often kind of think like is that a false flag? But I kind of get I guess I have like less faith in a lot of like cis progressives. I find that like there's two quotes that I always say that the left wing and right wing both kind of view us as just like cross-dressing males. The only difference is that the left wing thinks that being a cross-dressing male is like a good thing, and that that cis people, like no matter political orientation, are only really interested in us insofar as, for the left wing, it's insofar as we can deconstruct the traditional gender roles of masculinity and femininity, and for the right wing, it's they focus on like pushing their religious agenda and outrage, like, oh my God, the children are castrating themselves. And I think that a lot of like this individual could, so there's a difference between like the parts of gender that are socially constructed and the parts of gender that are more tied to sex, like facial hair. Like if they just took 10 minutes to drag a razor off their face, even with shadow, and they can throw some cover up on there and they want to say that, they instantly have way more. And I feel like people often get caught up in like, you'll say like, oh, like the trans medicalist debate. And it should be more, I don't think it should be more of like a, do you need, dysphoria? It's just, there has to be something, and it has to be more than a hat.
You have to do something. Just something, because if you do the smallest something, it's like, okay, you're somewhere within your transition. I will give you grace. I'm not going to say that you're not trans. I'm not going to say that you're not, I'm not going to attack you because I see that you're trying. But there are a lot of people, whether it be sarcastically or for some purpose or seriously, there are seriously people who are saying, fuck femininity, but call me a trans woman. And we saw somebody, I'm not going to call him out because I do remember that screen name on Instagram. I'm not going to call them out. However, there was a person who fully topless picture, beard, 100% masculine presenting. Actually, I'd say like 85, just a little feminine, but not enough to show that I am aiming to be a woman. And that person said, if another person calls me he, I'm going to put on my favorite dress and beat their ass. And then said a whole bunch of other stuff. And so people started coming in, specifically trans women, started coming in and being like, hey, so you saying that you are a trans woman, but you reject femininity. It's dangerous to us in these ways. This is harmful to us in these ways. This is going to hurt trans women in these ways. And that person continued to like argue and talk about gatekeeping and talking about nobody can tell them whether or not they're a trans woman and this, that, and the third. And it's like, so fuck my voice. So you get to stand up and you get to yell and you get to shout. Sorry, girl. You get to yell and you get to shout about what being a trans woman is. But me, who has lived as a trans woman for 10 years, I have to shut the fuck up and sit back.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw Savannah in there. Savannah, you've been biting your tongue and like, ugh. So it's all yours.
Just take it all in, and to pull a very white cishet man kind of dialogue line. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, just to keep this fresh. I do believe that there is, like Evelisa was saying, the world operates in the binary. There's not much, there is a binary, and that's not to be, discussed one way or another. There are extremes on either side, and everyone falls somewhere on that spectrum. But it feels like, as someone else said, those are the ones that always go viral. Those are the ones who feel like it's just a conservative man kind of taking the piss at everybody and, being very kind of flagrant and incendiary on purpose, just to spark up foolishness and have them point the finger and be like, see, and it's the one that always goes viral, like I was saying, see, that's definitely it. I do, however, and this is just in my transition, I started out very feminine. If you go back to my first YouTube videos, because I have, my channel, even though most of them are locked now, I had it on my channel because I was like, you're not going to clock me. But I had on my channel sharing what my journey was, starting out very feminine. And now I'm comfortable. The difference is, even though you have butch lesbians who identify as female and are cis women, and even though you have trans women who kind of do their thing, their baggy shorts and a t-shirt kind of thing, they still read as female. And I think that's what the biggest thing is. Most of us have gone through the hormones and, like you were saying, the electrolysis, the laser, the thing. You don't have to be a glam. However, if someone doesn't read you as what you're trying to give, you can't take that out on them, baby. You can't. And for me, it kind of puts us in the middle between them and cis women. And we're trying to sit here and referee and be like, no, okay, I'm not trying to gatekeep, but don't think what they're doing is what I'm doing. And, what this person is doing is what I'm doing. And the fact that people don't put enough, this is my story, this is who I am as a person, and take that to heart. And yes, there's a trans umbrella, but the fact of the matter is we are all individuals. We're not a monolith. And that's just what it is.
You are so right. Like, see, when I see stuff like that, it feels to me performative. That's where I go with, like, this is not someone who is really authentically, genuinely saying that this is who they are. It feels disingenuous to me. But I can see how hurtful it is as well. I mean, Avalisa and I have known each other for quite a while now, have watched each other, like myself, seeing her kind of later in your transition. For myself, I call myself transmasculine because I believe intrinsically I'm both and I'm also Native American. I identify as Two-Spirit. But I don't run around and try and say, this is the way it is for all people like me. Because I know we're not a monolith. And I also have empathy and compassion for folks who are carrying identities that actually cause them even more harm. Black transgender women are dying at massively high rates, period. The life expectancy is 35 years, period. If you live beyond that, it's a miracle. And it shouldn't matter how you present your gender. It's for you to say. But if you're doing it in a way that damages other people, that's where I have to start drawing a line. And then there's that misinformation. Like, I think about, I have female friends, born cis female friends, who actually have facial hair, but because of the way the world has treated them, they shave. They do all the stuff that they need to do because they don't want to have to try to explain, and they shouldn't have to try to explain because it's really hard. But I have people who look at me and go, who maybe have known me for a long time and say things like, Eli, you look like you're an overweight lesbian with a glandular problem. Why don't you get rid of your facial hair? And I'm thinking, wow, I don't even know where to start with you, right?
So rude. I mean, yeah, that's really, my biggest thing is the fact, one of the biggest things is male privilege, right? I had to give up my male privilege to become who I am. There's no going back. You're not going to remove these big titties from my chest. It's just not going to happen. I can't go out there as a man. It's just never going to happen. I have had too much permanent changes to my body to go out there as a man. And that's what it kind of seems like this person is doing, is refusing to give up their male privilege because they can swap back and forth whenever it comes to taking off the hat. That's literally all they have is a hat. That's it. No, that's not the tea. I'm sorry. That is not the tea.
Yeah.
It seems really disingenuous because, so I was thinking about it when I was taking a shower earlier, and this may very possibly be offensive, but I don't want it to be. I want it to help make sense. So if a person says, I'm a drag queen, but I don't do shows and I don't do makeup. A person who is out here performing their ass off and is spending 4 hours putting on makeup to do this gig is going to be like, are you really?
It's offensive.
Yeah.
And the thing is that person can be, they can say that they're a drag queen. They can, do whatever they want in their own circle when they are referring to themselves. But the problem is that these people that are presenting very masculine and still benefiting from male privilege are speaking up and saying, I am the voice of trans women, whether they mean to or not, instead of saying, for me. Like Eli knows when we go out and when we're speaking to large groups, I say, I am not the Lorax. I do not speak for all of the trans. I speak for me. Yes, it may be very similar to other Black trans women specifically, other trans women, maybe somebody out there who doesn't follow the binary specifically, but I'm talking about me. Just me.
Like Rachel Dolezal.
I was going to go there.
She literally was one of the leaders in the NAACP, right? Is that the organization? Anyway.
Yes.
But
yeah, you got it.
She literally
NAACP.
She used her privilege. She used her privilege to climb up a social ladder that she should have never even been on the fucking ladder. Period.
Period.
Oh, are we about to cut? I'm sorry. I don't know if we're allowed to cut.
Girl, I have been dropping F-bombs left and right. That's why it's called Frankly Speaking. It's not with kids.
Yeah, I wanted to go with the argument of just like this stupid people are just oh, why can't you be transracial? Why can't I just say I'm a doctor if I decide to get some chloroform and take someone off the street and cut them up for fun? It's like, well, okay, those are that's you're not being. It's to some extent I am a woman because that's the way society sees me. It's I think honestly I could get away with my dead name. But and again, you can also argue oh, Rachel Dolezal did this and she looks Black. Okay, well it's she, but she's not.
She's not. She's not.
But she isn't, and there's no, and it's we have the brain thing. There is no such thing as a Black brain and a white brain. There's no such thing as a Black endocrine system and a white endocrine system. I'm sorry. There's a reason that when biologists don't discuss race, they discuss ethnicity, which a to do with haplogroups, which are geographic. It's not a it's not a race thing. They don't even use that word. It's just these arguments that come out of left field, all because of people like this who don't want to take 10 minutes to shave their face.
And one of the things he said in the video, my gender is actor. What? It's all of these people being, girl, yes. But it's so frustrating because transness has gotten so widespread and individual that people are using it as a fucking joke. I have heard so many people say, my gender is fruit snacks.
Or autism gender. Autism gender. It's the thing is, the reason I accept I accept the concept of being non-binary and stuff, and it's originally I didn't. I used to be a full-on true scum idiot. And I think somewhere now I lie where I think the trans med argument is kind of a red herring in a way. But for me, what goes under the trans umbrella is anything with a transition. You cannot transition to actor.
Take some classes, some acting classes. You never know what's going to happen.
It's not about transitioning. You're either good or you suck. And their acting abilities might be questionable. And maybe that's why they're doing what they're doing. I don't know. But at the same time, so I also look at it like this. I've had certain things that I have done in my transition, just like Lorelai was explaining. And we all have different places and different comfort levels, and there's nothing to get to. I think about this conversation similarly to when people will say to me after I come out as transgender, they say stuff like, well, love is love. Well, sure, if we're talking about sexual orientation, love is love, and everybody should be able to love whoever they want, or however many people, or no people. I mean, yes, love is love, but that's not what I'm just shared with you. So, it's like, it's having these conversations around how problematic people are and how dismissive they are, when we're sharing things that are really close and personal to us and important to us. So let me ask you, I'm going to just toss this question out. Whoever wants to answer it, please jump in and answer, or raise your hand and I'll call on one of you.
I want it to be Savannah. She's been trying to say something good for a hot minute.
Maybe I'll just bring Savannah up here, and Savannah can just let it. I'm going to give you 5 minutes, Savannah. How about that?
Okay.
You come on. What do you got? Give it to us. 2 minutes. Give 2 minutes.
What's the question again? I'm trying to keep.
The stage is just yours. I think that you should just go, just let it free flow.
So I wanted to bring up that trans people, much like ethnicity, we belong to a culture. And just like if you were to claim that you're Black, let me break this down. I took a 23andMe some months back last year, and I learned that I was Hispanic. I knew that I was always Irish, things like that, and it's a pretty decent percentage. But I'm not running around calling myself Afro-Latina. Why? Because that's not my culture. I take no part. I didn't grow up. If I want to learn that and then dive into that, once you kind of to level this back to transition, once I do the work and learn what it is to be a Latina in this world, to be Afro-Hispanic in this world, to move through with some of the issues that they have, because as a trans person, I have to get 2 letters, a year of doctor's offices visits, be on all kinds of things just to go and have my gender validated. If you live in a certain state, they're like, no, ma'am, no, sir. Can't get your birth certificate changed, certain IDs. And there have been legal movements to get these things changed, but every 4 years it seems like they're upended by the new regime, or every time somebody else gets in office, or maybe a state is just on some kind of sanction thing, like Georgia, Alabama, Texas, things like that, and they're like, we don't care. So it takes, if you're not a part of that culture, I feel like you really need to think about how you're going to identify. And that's not to gatekeep. That's for you to do some work, some soul searching, and say, am I really in this? And so that's why I feel, I'm like she was saying, I'm here for the non-binaries, live your best life. But you need to understand, I have friends that are non-binary. You need to understand that it's, I just pulled out, I have a black phone.
Trains is hard job.
The people, so they know when someone's talking, going back to us talking about damaging for just a moment, and then I'll be done and give up the floor. How I live my life, how I transition, how I move through the world, because I identify as a woman and am interacted with and seen as a woman. I am now in that culture that comes along with the cat calls, the harassment that most women deal with walking down the street. And we're talking, I say women in general, because we're talking about cis and trans now. If you are seen as feminine, you are going to have the interactions of a female or a feminine person moving through the world. That's now my culture. So it's a big deal to point out to somebody who's like snatching off, this don't come off. This ain't going nowhere. And even if it does, I could be bald-headed. And when I didn't have nobody's chest, and I'll give this example, I was going to rejoin the military. I was really bad. I was like, I'm going back into the Marines. I was going to join the Marines. I was in the Navy before, but I was like, I'm going to do it. I shaved my head and everything. No chest, no nothing, was giving bare bones, honey. So I show up, I go through the whole process, through the paperwork, everything like that. It's a little uncomfortable in the room. And then I get to the room. If no one knows about the military, they put you in one room, everybody's sitting there in their drawers, no shirt on, right? I'm sitting there. The men are having a conversation. And I say the men because I wasn't included in that culture, in that group. I'm sitting there, no shirt on, giving a little bit of sag, but not really. And in the middle of the conversation, I said something, to someone else. We're kind of kikiing, and then someone else. And then he goes talking to, they were like, what's so funny? Oh, well, she said blah, blah, blah. Why? because that's my essence, that's my culture, that's what I'm giving. And I sat there
Mm.
bald-headed, flat-chested, nipples throbbing, still being called a room full of men. And they clocked that too, because they looked at him and said, why'd you call her she? And he got so embarrassed and said, I don't know. If you're not giving that, by all means, they, them, she, her. I'll call you she out of respect for you. If you ask me to call you Bob and I know your name is Peter, I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, well, your mama named you Peter, so I'm going to call you Peter. I'm going to respect you in that sense, but let's not split hairs here and play games and act like this isn't who I am as a person at my core, at my culture. If even when all of this comes off, I'm still recognized as a woman. And that's my point.
I love that point. That's a beautiful point. You know, it's kind of interesting because when you bring up when I hear gatekeeping, what I think of is I think of how the government gatekeeps us with all the list of things that you just spoke about in regard to hormones and name changes and how do you get your IDs updated and yada, yada, yada. Like, to me, that's the biggest gatekeepers of all. And what's interesting is like, there's just this collective empathy and compassion that doesn't sometimes exist within the community. But I think it has an awful lot to do with what were you assigned at birth, what the color of your skin is, right? All of these things make a difference to how the world sees you and how the world treats you, period. I mean, I didn't transition and I didn't start my transition until 50. It is what it is, right? It is what it is. But there are certain things that aren't going to be reversible about my body for that first 50 years, no matter how many hormones I take, no matter what I do. And also because I'm Native American and like, I have relatives who have about as much facial hair as I do. Now, I've recently shaved, so it's not as prominent, but it shouldn't necessarily matter. But I wanted to bring up a question here, and then whoever wants to answer. But Maddie was trying to formulate her question. She came up with, I'm trying to think of what amount of gatekeeping should exist when it comes to being trans and labels, if any at all. Because words should have meaning that they shouldn't just mean whatever the person wants. And then she goes on to add, language is a communication tool, and it's important to everyone involved for certain words to have common meaning. And I don't disagree, but what would you all say about that?
That's my Maddie. So I wanna respond to her directly. I was giving the YouTube link to her, but so there's and she's gonna know what I'm talking about here, but I don't know who here will. It's a very sort of isolated, even on the internet, a community of, I guess you would call them trans women, social, medical transition or physical transition without social transition, basically permanent boy mode, and like just very extended period of time, not necessarily permanent, but like we're talking years, not months. And when I interact with these people online, I just out of just respect, and I know that the struggles they have, the dysphoria is extremely real. And I say, she, her, use whatever name they prefer out of respect. But if they ask me, am I a woman? I don't know that I can say yes, because as much as I understand dysphoria as well as anyone can, but to some extent, you are what other people say you are. And for some of these people, they're like, they go out and they're just like so incorrigibly feminine that despite their best efforts, they can't present it. But some of them aren't. Some of them, they can't help it. Then they can't pass. And especially if they don't even try, they have no trouble being read as male 100% of the time. I'm not gonna, but I don't know if I can in earnest say like, yes, you're a woman.
I have a question for Lorelai, real quick, Miss Thing. So I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly. You said that when people ask you, or is that a
that was like a general thing. So when they ask me, like when those specific people ask me, like do you consider me a woman? It's like, well, I respect your identity, but there is a function in society as a woman. And the thing is, there is also functioning in society as a trans woman. If you're just visibly trans and that you can't, and you're just due to your anatomy, bone structure, you are not able to, even in small interactions, pass for cis. That
right. If you're
whereas even when you're there, you're living life as a trans woman, And I feel like we've reached the point of like transvisibility where people are gonna like look at you and they're gonna see something in there, just out of respect if they're an accepting person. But for these people, that wouldn't even happen, because there's not even an attempt. And it's like they'll try and like cover their like breasts with like a big hoodie. And it's to what extent, like labels should exist. Labels should, it's hard to, get a general consensus. You can't poll all 8 billion people in the world. But there does have to be something. And I put, the trans umbrella is anything with a transition. That's what I like to say.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I like that. Is somebody cooking in the microwave over there, Lorelai?
Oh, that's inside the L-View.
When the microwave shut, I was like, oh,
what's for dinner? I'm hungry.
No, for the people who we're not validating on the world, it's not just us. It's not just us. We're not gatekeeping. The world is saying, you're giving brick. It is what it is. You're a butch queen at best. Okay, let it go. Everywhere you go, they call you sir. We're saying some people's their brow bones, things like that. Yes, some people are ugly. It is what it is. Some people are butch. They're red as mask, and I say ugly as well, because let's be real here. Being pretty offers us a lot of leeway when it comes to moving through the world and what we're going to be called, because that's the spectrum for femininity in general, femininity and masculinity. If you're giving harder features, you're looking whatever, it's the way the world is set up now. Now, if you were to travel back to, 16th, 15th centuries where men were wearing high heels and that was the tea and things like that, but there's a little bit of reality that we have to live in and be like, this is kind of what the world is giving us to work with. This is where we are. And if you're not somewhere on this spectrum between a 3 and a 6, then you're giving 0 to 1, or you're over here being extra feminine. And I don't like to stop somebody and say what you can and cannot be, but there is a growth to everything. There's a place to everything. And if you want to, like, you can keep an acorn, or like there are certain plants that you go buy from like Lowe's or Home Depot, wherever. Depending on the pot you put them in, that's as big as they're going to get. But if you place them outside and have them nurture and things like that, they will sprout up 10, 15 feet or whatever. And so I think sometimes if you want to be called a potted plant, honey, you be that. But don't come for the trees.
Yeah, it's
Be a potted plant. It's okay to be a potted plant. And I think that's where my issue is when a potted plant is like, I'm a tree and I'm going to speak for all of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
stay in your lane.
Stay in your own lane, yeah.
And here's
And
the
I
thing:
think
if
where-
that person on those videos would have said, "Hey, this is me. I'm speaking for me. Trans women are valid. They are real. They deserve respect." That's the part that's missing in that communication.
Yes.
So Avalisa, we had somebody put a comment on Facebook, and I'm gonna put it here
yes,
so that everybody can see it. And then I'm going to read it. It says, I met Avalisa at Omaha Fashion Week, assistant to the designer who helps the models dress before they hit the catwalk. I had no idea Avalisa was trans when I met her. I found this out later on Facebook. I felt a bit stupid, like I should have known out of respect for her or to her, but truly all I was presented with is another pretty model that I needed to assist. I hope this is not offensive to you, Avalisa, but that is why I'm here, to be educated. Anything you would like to say to Susie? That was from Susie.
So what that is my presentation. My presentation is extremely feminine most of the time, because I understand gender expression and gender identity and how they don't have to match up. That's a thing. But my expression is extremely feminine. And so when I go out and I move through the world, there are people who don't clock me. I feel like everybody clocks my T. It's all over the internet. Like, I feel like people see me and be like, that's a man. But people, I can pass through the world and people will assume that I am cis. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. Where the issue is when people do not fall into that category, where others assume that they are cis or others assume that they are trans binary. The thing is that if that's what it is. I'm trying to think of the right words. If there is an issue with people assuming what you are, I'm going to be 100% respectful to you. And I think as far as gatekeeping goes, if I see somebody is trying, and even not even if they're trying, just period. If someone comes to me and says, I want to transition, I can't transition because of money, because of safety, because of whatever reason there is, but they still want me to refer to them as she, her, I will 100% do that because that's respect.
Yeah.
That's 100% respect, and I will do that for you. However, the issue is when that person who has not actually done anything to transition stands up and says, I am the voice for trans women, or gets in a space where they are now heard as a trans woman, because that's dangerous for parents that have trans kids. That's dangerous for people who are making laws. That's dangerous for medical professionals, because all of a sudden people are thinking, oh, but do you have to transition to be a trans woman?
That's how
do you
get
have to go through all of this?
That's how you get the parents of trans kids being like, can't you just like cross dress on the weekend or something? Like,
That's like
this person on TikTok did it.
Yeah.
Cross-dresser. But that's what's important, because what happens is when you get the people who say things like, oh, and I'm gonna just throw some things out there, y'all can jump in on them when you want to, but they say things like woman born woman, I'm a you know, and they want to almost like bleed these things like, I'm a woman born woman, you can't call me anything else. And I'm like, I'll call you a woman, sis, but let's not act like you popped out the womb with a coochie. Let's not do that. There's a cis woman. We know what a cis woman is. That's not you. You want to be identified as a woman. You are under the trans umbrella. That is fine. Because what happens is we get all these rebuttals like, oh, well, what? So I can just walk into the bathroom like this, bald headed and no reason, and then, you know, I can just go rape a woman, blah, blah, blah. You could have walked into the bathroom any moment you felt you pleased to. Your gender or your identifying is not stopping you. Me looking like this, who's going to go through all this, get pumped, get titties, lip line, fillers, facials, walk around, you're harassed by your whole school, job, everything. So
just to go in the bathroom and sneak under the fucking toilet to rape somebody. What the fuck?
Oh my God, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. I've never understood the bathroom.
It's the dumbest false flag. It's like they don't know that like rape is illegal.
Well, and the other part about that, though, is we have to be real clear that folks have to understand that the folks who are doing the perpetrating of harm like that they are not even thinking about having to disguise themselves. They're already going in there and doing the damage that they want to do. It doesn't matter. They don't need to be a woman in a dress. Like, all of those fears are all unfounded.
If a man wants to rape a woman, do you really think that he's going to go through the trouble of putting on a dress and a wig so that he can sneak into a fucking bathroom? No, he's just going to do it because he's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, right.
Getting laser, he's butched and snatched. He's not doing all of that.
All right, Christy, you were trying to say something in there. Share what you were
going to say. That's gross. That's just flat gross. The fact that somebody would want to get I mean, no offense to anybody who gets their jollies off in the restroom, but that's gross.
Yeah, it is.
It's gross.
Well, and then the other thing is that anybody who knows statistics or has any clue about research, you know, folks who are perpetrating that kind of harm on people are cis white men.
Yeah.
Cis white men are predominantly in research the ones who are perpetrating that kind of harm, especially if you're talking about folks who are pedophiles. And that's a whole nother story. That's for a whole nother, frankly speaking. And y'all can be invited back for that one, because that'd be a long ass conversation.
I do want to point something out, seeing that we are speaking about cis white men. And this is going to be the most controversial thing that I say. A lot of the times, the people that you see living very masculine, male privileged lives and claiming to be trans women or claiming to be something else are usually white men. And it is their reason so that they can say, oh no, I'm marginalized, I'm a minority, I'm a trans woman, even with this beard, even if I wear a suit and tie to work every day and do absolutely nothing to transition, I'm still a trans woman. And that's why I am marginalized. That's why you need to feel bad for me, because white men, nobody feels bad for white men. So now I'm a trans woman.
Yeah,
You don't feel bad for me.
Okay, and this is something I wanted to bring up, and it's sort of an exclusively like online problem, because this doesn't work in person. But with the like invading spaces things, there is online lesbian spaces. Of course, they are try and be trans inclusive. And there is like what you try and see is you see people, like the person we had in the video, like very like not just masculine presenting, but like it's like the facial hair and everything. They'll go into these spaces, and they like if you put like any of us there and you put them there under like the rules, like we are the same, but we're clearly not the same. You have like. You sort of it affects it's an optics thing. It affects people on the right, because they think we're all like this, but it also affects like in lesbian spaces where most of the people generally more left wing. It's where they're sort of afraid to speak up, because like in just in terms of when you don't have not even just like a strict definition, but when you don't have any definition at all, I am the same thing as that person.
Yes, those people are fuel for TERFs. Yes,
and it's I at least in the spaces where I've seen that, I don't see much like most of the people are pretty reasonable in terms of I realize that you're not the same, but it's just you're sort of like a culture of not being able to say anything, because these people are the loudest. These people are the people that when you try and say no, they're going to throw the biggest fuss, bigger than anyone else. Whereas when it's like if there's a bunch of cis women and they're talking about their period, I'm not going to speak up. I'm not going to make a fuss about that.
When I am in a female space and there are more cis women than there are trans women, which are a lot of spaces that I have been in, if they start talking about problems with carrying children, problems with childbirth, problems with fertility, I am not going to be the one to stand up and be like, me too, sis, I can't have kids.
Yes, that's where you stay in your lane.
That's where I stay in my lane.
Yeah, and it's that they've got to do the same.
Jeez, Louise.
All right, just FYI, we have 7 minutes left. And so with that, Avalisa, what's one of the burning questions that you would like to ask our guests today?
Burning question. Give me a sec.
I'll just say this real quick, just so that our audience knows. We do pay a small stipend to folks who join us as guests on the show, but we do appreciate it if you also send them tips. I know they wouldn't agree unless they were okay with the amount of money that we were giving them to join us and be on the show and do some of the things that we ask for as we're prepping for it. But we do appreciate y'all very much. Christy, I've been asking for your Cash App or your Venmo. I don't know if you saw that in the private chat, but if you could please send it to me, I'll post it because I would like to share everybody's information at some point.
Yes, girl, I called an old phone number and they have been calling me back through this entire thing.
So anyway, so put that in the chat, our private chat, so that I can add that, Christy. But now I'm going to go back to Avalisa. So what's that burning question you want to ask?
The burning question,
and then everybody's going to get a minute to respond. So, and we'll start with Christy. So ask your question, and then we'll start with Christy.
The burning question that I have is: do you think that there is a place for gatekeeping, and that the screaming of "your gatekeeping" has gone too far?
Well, definitely in the past, I probably have went a little bit too far with it. But I do think that there actually is a place for gatekeeping. We just got, Obamacare with the Affordable Care Act allowing, making it to where the insurance companies can't discriminate against transgender people for their transitional surgeries, which is funny because it still seems to happen. But if we don't like do some sort of gatekeeping, the word transgender isn't going to mean anything. And it can affect our surgeries. It can affect all these necessary things that I personally wouldn't have been able to afford if it wasn't for something like Obamacare and people sort of gatekeeping what transgender means, essentially. You know, because medical terminology is medical terminology. You know, you can't say I'm transgender and just stay the same. It just doesn't work. Has that been a minute?
Thank you for speaking so frankly, Savannah.
So to respond to that, I do believe it is what it is. That's the world we live in. There's going to be gatekeeping for everything. And I always bring it back to the Black community because that's another community I belong to. You can be Black, call yourself Black, be under that umbrella. But if you're not doing anything to engage within that culture and that community, and I will always go back to that, then you can all you want to, but the world won't see you as Black. The people that you're dealing with in your community are also going to look at you sideways. So I believe the same thing applies to trans people. And I am a big gatekeeper when it comes to that. As long as you do something, been to a gay club, shown up at a drag show, gotten beat down, you've got something showing you're a part, then I'll support you all day long. But until then, I'm going to ask your pronouns, and I'm going to look at you sideways when you tell me anything other than they, them, or he. And that's just what I live by.
Thank you for being frank. Lorelai?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, it's not an issue of should we gatekeep. It's an issue of like, you know, should we have a fence with a 30-foot tall fence with barbed wire? Should we have one of those gates where you just reach over and pull the thing to the side? I'm you know, somewhere in the middle. Like I said, with, you know, like the people in that, you know, secluded corner of the internet with, you know, medical transition, no social transition. It's you know, just out of, you know, understanding dysphoria, I respect that. I say she, her. If they're growing out their facial hair, I might not. Yeah, it's an issue of how tall the gate should be. There definitely has to be something you can't erode away. And I think also something that's very destructive is sort of the confusion of the elements of gender that are socially constructed and the elements of gender that are more tied to your biological sex. Like it's like I want to see something. I want to see an attempt at a transition. I want to see some sort of thing that changes that can't just immediately be removed with like I lift my hand and pull the hat off.
That hat with that ponytail is too much for me.
I want one. Could you imagine? I'm just like, I want.
Gotta get a front too.
Yeah, you gotta have a bang, and you know it needs to be a heavy bang so you don't get spooked out in public.
Okay, yeah.
Eli, we're having trouble hearing you.
I think you're muted, Eli.
I did mute myself. Thank you. All right. Well, we are getting to the end of our show. I do also want to share, because we do have a Patreon page. We have a number of folks who have been supportive on Patreon and have really are what makes this show happen. I want to thank Kristen Dupree, Scott Feeker, Emiliana Blanco, the new Mexicast, Rick, Corey, Angela, JD, Deborah, Barbara and Ted, Arthur, Kent, Mel and Randy, Ferial, Sheila, Chris Winter, and Ben Cass. They have all been supporters of my Patreon page, of our Patreon page, and that's what has finally made this possible, and so that I am able to compensate folks for being on the show. But once again, I'm going to roll through the ticker of tips. If you'd like to give Savannah a tip, please make a note of this and feel free to send her Venmo and Cash App.
By all means.
By all
Catch a
means,
coin.
by all means, every tip will be welcome and appreciated. For Lorelei, this is a PayPal, so you want to PayPal Lorelei at the following email. We have the lovely Miss Avalisa has her Cash App, the $sign Avalisa Gallo, making that easy. And then we have Christie's information. If you do want to send a message, if you go to Facebook on Speaking of Happy, you can send me a message if you want any updates on any of those Cash Apps or those tips and all that information, or if you have questions. Thank y'all so much for being on the show. This has been a really robust conversation. And I'm going to correct myself. Thank y'all for being on the show, because none ya are guys, right? You are not guys. You are three lovely women, and so appreciative of the time that you've taken to help us get prepped for the show and then to show up tonight. Is there anything else anybody would like to say before we call it a night?
I think more than anything, I want to thank the panel. I also want to thank the people that have been here to have this conversation with us. This is not an easy conversation. And this is a conversation that trans women are afraid to have, because a lot of people say, oh, well, you're just trying to define what trans means. You're trying to invalidate who I am as a trans person, even though I don't follow the binary. And it's not that I want to invalidate anyone else. It's not that I want to make you feel bad or make you feel like you're not trans enough. What I want to do is make sure that the words that you are saying, specifically the public words that you are saying, are not harmful and invalidating to me. And because it is such a slippery slope, this is a conversation that we have in private. We do not have this conversation in mixed company. And so to be able to do this today and have this conversation, I am very appreciative for the people, the lovely ladies who came in and talked with us, to the audience for being here, and Eli for giving me this time. We were supposed to have a different show, and I sent Eli those videos, and he was like, okay, let's do this. Let's do this on the 16th.
That's right. We flipped it up on the fly, and that's totally fine. I'm good with rolling with the punches. So just for our viewing audience, we are doing these shows right now every other week. We would love to do them weekly, but right now the budget is every other week. So next Friday, we will not have a show. The Friday after that, we will have a show. We are going to go out with our quick little Speaking of Happy Presents promo. Again, thank you all so much for being here, and take care.
Thank you.
Speaking of Happy presents Frankly Speaking, with co-hosts Eli Rigatuso, founder and queer transmasculine two-spirit of the Menominee Nation, and the lovely Avalisa Gallo, model, public speaker, makeup fanatic, and outspoken transgender advocate. Together, we are Frankly Speaking.